Teman-teman friends, I ask you to open your cam. Kalau bisa silakan open kamera ya. Karena nanti ini Dr. Nazmo sudah meluangkan waktu. It will be quite disrespectful kalau kita tidak menyalakan kamera begitu. Teman-teman friends, I ask you to open your cam. Kalau bisa silakan open kamera ya. Karena nanti ini saya admit ya teman-teman ya. Mohon sih kalau ada yang bisa open cam, please.
Ngomong gimana sih ngomong? Seru.
If
Kasih tahu nggak sih Ika?
if you cannot open your cam, that's fine. But if you can open your cam, it will be great. Okay, especially for IP students, please open your cam. Ika cannot. Okay, no worries, Ika. Okay, understandable. Okay. Okay, Assalamualaikum, Dr. Nazmul.
Walaikum salam.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you so much. How's everything going on? Is everything good there?
Yeah, it's great to have you here. It's been a long time since I met you last time in Delhi.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it's
Yeah.
almost three and a half years, I think, if
Three
I'm
and a
not
half.
wrong.
Yes. So it's great to have you here in my South Asia class. So this is a small class actually because it's a specialization class for second and third year students. So in second and third year, they have to take specialization, and one of the specialization course available is on South Asia. So this course is intended for students who are going to research and do undergraduate thesis on South Asia. And most of them are currently working on a research proposal on BIMSTEC. Some of them are working on BIMSTEC. Some of them are working in Bangladeshi politics as well.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. There will be someone who will be asking questions on Bangladeshi politics about
Welcome.
and also the dynamics between Awami League and BNP. I explained quite a line on that. And also some are more interested into the regional dynamics. And today students will be having a nice discussion session, hopefully, inshallah, with Dr. Muhammad Nazmul Islam. So let me introduce Dr. Muhammad Nazmul Islam. He is one of my colleagues in the Ankara Yildirim Beyazıt University. He's now an associate professor at the Department of International Relations, if I'm not mistaken.
It's a Department of Political Science and International Relations. It's okay. It's normal in Turkey.
Okay, yeah. In Turkey, sometimes we combine the political science and international relations, and it's very common in several state universities as well as in private universities. So, Doctor, I attend a course in Delhi together with Dr. Nazmul back then in 2020 under the program of Kautilya Scholarship, Kautilya Fellowship Program. And we were together learning about South Asian politics, particularly about Indian politics. And Dr. Nazmul's specialization is on the topic of South Asia geopolitics and also foreign policies of South Asian countries. So, Dr. Nazmul, without further ado, I would like to welcome you to give your insights and talk on the South Asian politics and geopolitics and also great power contestation in the region. Dr. Nazmul, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Indeed, I mean, we have a very, very common thing, especially in terms of academic specializations. If I'm not wrong, Mr. Hadsha, I mean, he is also my brother. I always tell him Abi. So he's a big brother. So it's nice to see you and also your students. I mean, I saw two videos open and others are, I can't see their face. I hope I can see your faces, but yeah, if you are not available, that's not a problem. Happy to be here, and I'm so happy to see you here. Indeed, I mean, the topic we will discuss today, I mean, it's one of the core and I mean, from many perspectives, we have to discuss these things and try to understand what is going on in the region, and from or how we need to actualize and understand the region. So let's give me a time. I just want to share the slide. That would be much more interesting. Yeah, okay. Could you please give me
Yes,
permission to
of course. I've provided the permission for you.
okay, okay,
Just
that's
to share your
great.
slides. Okay, thank you very much.
Again, okay, thank you. So yeah, I think everyone are concerned about our topic today. It's about the great powers in South Asia and how we can actually put South Asia within hegemonic competition. So it's a very interesting topic, and I got this exact title from Mr. Hadja. I think, yeah, you choose a really right topic to understand the region. And it's also interesting actually to learn that all of the students they're doing, and they will do research, they will do a dissertation on South Asia. That's very interesting. Of course, like South Asia, I mean, it has a many perspectives. So here we'll try to see the whole region, especially some specific country from the great powers perspectives. So our aim is to learn, our aim is to look South Asian countries, how the great powers, they're playing their policy in the region. So by looking at some specific points, maybe it would be much more easy to understand and comprehend the region, how we need to start. So the first thing we need to see that in academia or in scholarly discussion, how this debate has been arised, how this debate has been focused. So we need to see the great powers competition or great power rivalry. We need to see the geopolitics in the region. And then we can need to link these things with the theoretical perspectives, because it's a two or more focused from the perspective of academia. That's why we need to also see how we need to theorize the issue. Is the exist theory, or are the exist theories enough to identify, to explore the geopolitical competition or great power competition in the region? And then we will try to see the contemporary aspects, how we need to link the great power competition in the region. And then we will see how the South Asia linked and nexus the great power rivalry, great power competition, and global geopolitical issues. And then we will try to see the different kind of contestations. And finally, we'll try to see some specific future of South Asia by looking at that specific policy. Here we'll see how we need to read the whole phenomenon of geopolitics, great power rivalry, and also great power competition in South Asia. The first thing what we need to look the today's world, what is going on in the world, how we need to read the today's world, what is going on in world order. That's the most important thing we need to look, because if we can understand what is going on in the world, what is going on in the world order or global order, then it will be much more easy for us to link the global world order with South Asia and with or from the perspective of South Asian hegemony, like say from global powerful countries. And then we'll try to link this whole phenomenon from three perspectives again: the global or world order, great power competition, and geopolitics. And also we'll try to see that, okay, if we want to make a research in this field, we have to also look at what kind of works have been done so far on this kind of area. So by looking at the today's world, basically we need to see the different kind of narratives and discourses that is prevailing, especially after the COVID-19, or we can say the coronavirus, because it's, of course, I mean, there are many periodization we need to discuss in international politics or in global politics. But in recent times, I think the coronavirus, or most recently, Ukraine and Russian crisis, and if we want to say that the the more and more recent issues like Israel-Palestine issue, it has shown us some important things to understand and to clarify what is going on in the world politics. So let's look some very important statement to understand the global great power competition and the scenario and the situation of great power countries, especially from the Euro-Western centric countries like USA or any European countries, and how we need to read the world order. What is the situation of world order? For example, if you look here, the one of the former German foreign minister, Joseph Fischer, he said very recently on December 2023, said that there is no world order. And if we look at the same kind of statement, you will find from the, let's say, from the European Council of Foreign Relations commentary, the Murphy, he said, like, the European leaders are realizing the old global order is crumbling. That's the most important thing. I mean, they are not trusting old or exist world order. And also there is also other issues written by Council on Foreign Relations. It has written an article on the end of world order. So they're trying to explain, like, okay, we are looking or we are witnessing the end of the world order. And also the popular and very famous, though he all died recently, the Henry Kissinger, he said on 3rd April 2020, the coronavirus pandemic will forever alter the world order. That's interesting, but we didn't see that changes, but it still is a very, very big question. I mean, the coronavirus pandemic will forever change or alter the world order. That's also another important thing to understand the world order. And the Bloomberg, they also say that the same, the topic, same way, the Indo-American world order. And you will see the different kind of things it has been said, the exist world order is changing. So why they're talking these things? Because they're looking, the new world order is coming, and the exist world order, they're crumbling, or they're not making what they're supposed to do. For example, they should have a role or effective role in the crisis of, let's say, like, if we want to take a case study like Ukraine issue, or they may have a most important role in the case of, let's say, for example, Israel-Palestine issue, and also many other topics we can put one by one, and we can understand there is no exist or reliable world order. And that way we can read or we can link our exist international politics. But the question is here, I mean, when we're talking about the exist world order, it means like when we're criticizing exist world order, we need to also see the rule-based international order. For example, as we are debating exist internet world order is crumbling, so it means the new world order is coming from the other side of the world. Let's say China, for example. So when we're talking about the China, even from the look of the great power competition, when we're talking about the great powers, let's say like it could be China, it could be Russia, it could be whoever, I mean, who have this specific powerful position in the world politics, they may have some role to play and to make the world order. The question is here, do those countries or do these countries like China, are they making rule-based international order? Let's take this question. Maybe we'll find or we'll try to link these whole things with our South Asian case. And that is also another thing we need to ask ourselves, especially in a scholarly debates. When we're saying that the world order is changing, is it really true? I mean, is it really true that the exist powerful state like USA, their power is declining, and the new power, they're taking the exist power? So that could be also one interesting question when we're looking at the contemporary world politics. And that is another debate when we're talking, I mean, especially, when we're talking about the reports from the CFR or Bloomberg or the scholars like Henry Kissinger, or let's say the different countries' foreign minister, especially from the Europe or West, they say the world order is ending. But that the thing is here, world order is never ending. It's a process, actually. It's a transitional or transformational process. So this is actually a problem, because in Euro and West-centric world, the world order can be exist only from their region. They don't believe like, okay, the world order can come, or the great power can emerge, or great power can be raised from the non-Western countries. That's the big question to understand what is going on in the psychology, in the understanding of Euro-Western centric world. So that's why they believe like, okay, the fall of the American power means the fall of the world order. But it is not true. Before the American world order, there was a many world order. We can read the Chinese dynasty or China's world order. We can read the Indian civilization or Indian's dynasty, Indian world order. We can also observe the Turkish, or we can say the Ottoman Empire. We can also read that the different other empire like Persian Empire. And also, like, if you want to see that the Islamic empires like Abbasi, Umayyad, or also different kind of dynasty. Almost every dynasties are different kind of period. They made their own world orders. So it's a very big debating issue when we are looking some scholars from the Western countries, from the Eurocentric world, they're believing the ending world order means the end of the American power. So it's a big question. We have to understand also, no, it's not a end of the world order, because world order is never ending. We need to understand the first. So anyway, from the academically, why this kind of confusing things is making, especially in the Euro and Western-centric world. The first thing we need to see that the scholarly books that have been so far written in Western academia. You notice if you want to take one example, just Henry Kissinger's a very famous book, World Order. So in his book, you will see almost every country, especially from the Western perspective, he took it like, these countries, they're making order. But when it is coming from the Middle East or Islam, they're making or doing something, it looks like, okay, it makes a disorder. And it is not only about the Middle Eastern or Islamic country. So from some perspective, they're also criticizing the non-Western countries, especially the Chinese perspective, or from the Asian perspectives, they're criticizing the power from that region. So that's why you will see in exist literature, in exist academic debates, when we're talking about the world order, it's a mixed up from the Western scholar, because they don't believe, they don't see the world order can come from the non-Western world, non-Western countries. That's also another good things that we need to understand what the problem lies in academia when we're trying to see that the Western and non-Western part of the world order and global power or geopolitics and great power competition. However, if we want to relate the whole phenomenon, so far we understand that the world order, what kind of things is going on in world politics, the first thing we need to understand the great power competition. Who can be great powers? How we need to identify or in what way we can identify these other countries are the great powers. The first four things that we need to understand: do this country or do this country or that country have an influence? So we need to understand that their influences on their neighbors, their region, or in world politics. Do they have a control? Control means, let's say, like, do they have any kind of way by making influence and then taking the control of their neighbors and their region? And then, of course, the authority is also another important thing. So, authority, a country, they can make a policy in other country without any force. So probably we will have a discussion about that. But again, let's say like soft power. You are basically making authority in other country without any force, even to some extent without any hegemony. So that could be one of the very good things. A country, they will make their authority on B country. And in that way, you can identify that country as a great power. Or also the balance or hegemony, the final things. Let's say a country, they have an influence, they have a control, they have authority, Now the questions, do they have, or are they making a balance or hegemony in their region or in the world politics? That is also other arguments. That's a very, more frequently used in a realism theory in our field. So when we're talking about the how the great powers can work in world politics, we are basically looking at countries' three specific characteristics. The one is, are they making community? Are they making order? Are they making stability? So when we're talking about the community, for example, let's take the Indonesia, for example. Indonesia, they have many communities around the world. Let's say, for example, Indonesia, Turkey can be an Indonesian partner. Even USA, they can be Indonesian partner. European Union or South Asian countries, they can be Indonesian partner, and they can be community. And this community can be based on bilateral relations, can be based on multilateral relations, can be based on multilateral groups. Let's say, for example, HCO, Shanghai Cooperation, or maybe based on BRICS, or maybe based on United Nations. So different way you can make, or a country make a community. But is it enough to tell that country can make a great power role? No, it's not, because they must have a policy. They must have a strength to make an order. So how we need to define the order? For example, let's say Turkey, again, Turkey, they may have a community in Southeast Asian countries or South Asia. They have a very good friends like Indonesia, like Malaysia, like Pakistan, like Bangladesh. But it's a community-based relations. It's not a order-based, because Turkey is not that much powerful countries in those countries. But if you take the Turkey again in Middle Eastern region, in the same category, you'll find, yes, Turkey is making community, and also Turkey is making order in here. In an existing Turkey, they're involving in many wars, many military conflicts, and some way they're making their power in the region, whatever it could be in Syria or in Iraq or in Libya or in Azerbaijan, whatever it is. So they're making their order in here by establishing their capacity and authority and control. And finally, the most important thing for any country to be a great power, making stability. Many countries in the world politics, you will find they may have a community and they may have an order, but they don't have a capacity to make a stability. Because making stability is another kind of powerful activity that a country should have to tell them or to give them a status of great power. So what we're trying to mean the stability. For example, we are talking about the China, we are talking about the Russia, we are talking about the USA, or we are talking about probably India. So in all of this category, the stability is also another important thing. A country, let's say like, okay, let's talk about the US. US is exist powerful, or we can say like superpower. So if you say that these three categories, they have the same characteristic. They're making community, they're making order, and if they want, they can make a stability. Because they have that power. Stability, we are not talking about the peaceful stability. Stability means even by making conflict, you have a power, you have a capacity to make a stable relations in the region. So that's called the power. That's called the great power, or that's the way we can define the great powers. Now come up these things like, when we are talking about this kind of topic, how we need to identify how scholars they're writing and they're talking about this kind of topic. I'm trying to make a Prisma model. It's one of the model to make a systematic review of any kind of research. So by making Prisma model, I try to find out the articles from Google Scholar and Scopus, try to see what kind of topics are working related to the great power competition. You see, till June 6, as far I have searched on Google Scholars, more than 6,000 papers so far written only in 2024. So I'm not talking about even the before 2024. So most of the topic, if you look at the great power competition, what they're talking about the China and US. They're talking about the Indo-Pacific region. They're talking about the free and open Indo-Pacific strategy. They're talking about the Belt and Road Initiative, China-Myanmar Economic Corridor, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, AUKUS in Australia, USA, and United Kingdom's cooperation, they're talking about the soft power, they're talking about the geoeconomics, quad, small power strategy. So these are the things most frequently written by the scholars in our field. So they're trying to see when we're talking about the great power competition. So these are the topic. You see here, when we're talking this topic, is automatically comes to the region like South Asia, like Asian region, like Indian Ocean, like Indo-Pacific region. So it's a very, I mean, the topic we are talking here, it looks like it's a very prevalent and very dominant academic discourse. And by looking at the Scopus, so far 15 articles has been published, I mean, in last 6 months on Scopus. And also you'll see that it's almost talk the same topic in the Pacific, geopolitical rivalry, US-China issue, 5G competition, sustainable development goals and Belt and Road Initiative, bilateral relations, multipolarity, alliances compliance, security technology clubs, technological leadership. So these are the topic they're talking or they have written by making the research on Scopus journals. So why I'm putting these things? To understand the importance of this topic, to understand even also like, maybe we're talking the great power competition, but the scholars, they are talking only Europe. They're talking only South America. They're talking about Africa. No, you see, they're not talking about those countries. Basically, they're talking about the region where we are living, where we are, I mean, for example, talking now. So that's the way we can relate. Yes, this region has a huge importance, and this region is or mostly related with the great power competition and hegemony. So that's the way you can understand. That's the way we can relate in any kind of academic discussion. So basically, we cannot deny the things. We cannot develop even by ourselves. Oh, okay. I mean, I'm thinking South Asia is very important. Great power is important. No, we cannot say something like that. We have to show the proof. So this prisma, it is giving us some, academic backup to show what is exactly going on in the region and how academicians, researchers, or observer, analysts are analyzing the region. So that's why, I mean, it's important to understand the things. However, so let's see the theoretical things when we're talking about the great power competition. Why theoretical things? I mean, the most important thing, we need to come up this idea. What exist theory are talking about great power competition? You remember just a couple of slides before I talk about the gap of exist theory, because most of the theories, especially from the Western perspective, it could be the realism, or especially we are talking about the mainstream IR theory, like realism, like liberalism, like, neorealism, or constructivism, or Marxism, whatever it is. They're taking their contextual perspectives, their ontological and epistemological discussion based on Western countries, based on Europe. And for example, let's say like when the realism, the idea of realism has been developed, the idea of new realism has been developed, they took the case study of European countries or America or North American countries. So now what's the problem in here? Actually, there is no problem. The problem is here when you are analyzing Indonesia or China by looking at the realism theory, because the realism theory is not enough to identify what is going on in Southeast Asia, what is going on in South Asia. So that's the most important thing we're talking about. Like there is a gap in the theory. We need to look like the region from the regional perspective. We need to look at the region, how the regional scholars are analyzing the region, how the regional scholars are looking at the region. We shouldn't take let's say like the theory which are talking only European countries, which are talking only the Western countries. So there is a huge gap to identify the Asian or South Asian, or let's say like, the Indo-Pacific, or all over the issues. So that's the way you need to understand that when you're talking the great power countries, we have this huge gap. Now come here, I mean, we also see this, the whole phenomenon. I mean, there is a gap, we understand, but we also understand that the gap of the theoretical things from some either perspectives. For example, we are talking about the great power rivalry, how we need to do theorization of this kind of thing. You know, the great power things, especially in a exist academia, they're talking or they're taking this idea from, let's say, like, you know, especially Peloponnesian War that has been utilized when you are talking about the great power. So they're trying to say, like, I mean, scholars, especially in this field, or most of the scholars who are talking, let's say, like, you know, realism or new realism, like John Mearsheimer or Morgenthau, or even the Alexander Wendt. Most of those scholars, they're trying to identify the great powers from the perspective of Peloponnesian War. That war has been happened between Greece and Athens, and sorry, I mean Athens and Sparta. During that time, Sparta was the dominant power, and on the other hand, Athens, they were the emerging power. So when we're talking the great power, they're trying to take these things that has been developed by Thucydides. He was the one of the general of Greece military, whatever. So they're trying to say, like, okay, how we need to understand the psychology of the great power. Why great? I'm sorry. Why great? So, just a minute. Okay.
Take your time, Dr. Nazmul.
Okay, it's okay, no problem. Because it's so morning in here. Just wake up and that's why it's mixed up. I mean, you know.
No worries. Yeah,
Sorry.
just take your time.
Okay. So what we're trying to talk here, you know, that the Athens and Sparta. So the Sparta, it was the exist power, dominant power. Let's say like in contemporary times, like US. And on the other hand, Athens, they were the emerging power. They want to take control, or they were trying to do their development, their control, their authority in the region. So it was very challenging for exist power, like, you know, Sparta. And then Sparta, they attacked on Athens. So most of the times, the exist power, they're attacking on emerging power. So scholars like, you know, Graham Allison, he has a very good article about that. I will suggest you to read this one. It has been published firstly on 2012. And then, I mean, he also have some other book. It has been published also in 2018 to relate these great power things and Thucydides trap. So, however, I mean, this trap is trying to tell us how we need to read the psychology and mentality and their idea of great power competition. In what way they are looking at each other. In what time the exist power, they may attack on emerging power. And in what way they will involve in a conflict, in a war. So, and also by taking this example, like, you know, the Athens and Sparta issue. However, we'll have this more discussion like to relate to the South Asia. So these are the things we need to understand on one word theorizing the issue. But again, I'm trying to, I mean, encourage you to see the region from the regional perspectives rather than to look at the exist or Western ayah theory, because it's not enough to identify what is going on in the region. Anyway, and again, like when we are trying to theorizing the great power rivalry, theorizing the great power competition, basically we need to again look at these three things, as we said, or as we discussed earlier: community, order, and stability. That's the important things. However, now we have to see this very specific thing when we're talking the great power transitions. So as we say that there should have an emerging power and also dominant or exist power, in what time they will involve in a conflict. There is a very interesting and very great scholar, his name is Organsi. He developed this power of transition theory to identify the great power competition and great power situation in world politics. For example, in what time the emerging power and dominant power, they will involve in a competition, or they will start to make or to have their differentiation of their opinion, and then they may involve in a war. For example, he said, if there is a power differentiation 20% between the emerging and dominant power, then they will never involve in a war, involve in a conflict. For example, let's take the China and US. If China and US, if they have a power differentiations, like say 20%, then it's automatically they will never involve in a war. They will never involve in a conflict. That's what happened. They may have a many arguments, they have a many opinions, but it's still they are not involved in any kind of things that may tell us like, okay, these two countries are going to or involved in a war. But the question is when they will involve or when they will start or making conflict. It's said like if the power differentiates like, if it is the 4.5 or 5%. So if let's say exist power or dominant power and the emerging power, if they have a powerful tools like the difference is 5%, then probably they will involve in a war. So that's the most important thing to understand and to relate this whole scenario in the case of South Asia. So how we need to read the South Asia? Are they really going to war in South Asia? Or they're making competition in South Asia? That's the important thing by looking at this graph. Yes. So again, we need to see like, okay, how we need to read the gap of this whole phenomenon. Let's say when you're talking about the power transition, exist, or mainstream ayah theory, if we really want to develop some new terminology, new discourses, new idea of great power and hegemony and let's say this idea, how we can relate these things with South Asia. For example, we have to look the identity. We have to look the values. We have to look at the norms, discourses, historical narratives, cultural factors, geosocial factors, geoeconomic fact. By looking at these issues, then we can relate this whole phenomenon with the great powers and try to see the great powers' role and policy on the specific country. Let's say, for example, if you want to look at the great power competition in South Asia, not whole South Asia, like a specific country like Nepal, like Sri Lanka or Bangladesh, we can take the whole South Asian countries by looking their identity, values, norms, discourses, historical narratives, cultural factors, geosocial and geoeconomic fact, that we can develop our idea, right? So that's the important thing, and that's the way we can develop the theoretical gap. Now, here we will try to see the different kind of aspects of great power rivalry and geopolitics from the global scenario. I mean, when we're talking about the evolvement of, the world order or evolving of geopolitics and new geopolitics, basically we have to see some specific area. For example, most unfrequently, we're talking about the US and China. And when we're talking about the US and China, we're talking about the trade war competition in Asia, in the Pacific region, South China Sea disputes, AI, 5G, cybersecurity, espionage, space race. So these are the predominant issue we are talking about this, great power competition in the region. And also there is also other great power competition like Russia and Western NATO countries, though it is not a part of our discussion, so I'm not go those stuff. And also there is also some other great powers competition like EU's, particularly Germany and France's and UK's role towards China and US's competition. And also emerging powers, they have some role in the shifting of great power like Turkey, Brazil, India, South Africa. So they're making not exactly the great powers, but they have a huge role to make and change the policy of the great powers. Let's say, for example, India's policy in the South Asia, how India is making a policy towards or with Western countries like US, and how it is making a real impact in South Asia. And from the Chinese perspective, how China, by making their partnership with Pakistan, is making a real changes in South Asia. So that's the way also we need to see how emerging powers or how the exist powers are making together to change the great power status in any region. Now come here, the South Asia. I mean, of course, like when we're talking about the South Asia, it comes to our mind the 8 countries of South Asia. So I'm just trying to make it in a more, definitive way that would help us to understand and to see the South Asian countries. For example, we have to take the first 3 small states. And when we're trying to talk the small states, somehow these small states have their own politics and they have their own foreign policy and they have their own partnership. So for example, we're talking about the Ismaili states, especially Bhutan, Maldives, and Nepal. And then one transitional state. Why is the transitional state? I mean, I'm talking about Afghanistan. The Afghanistan, you know, that now it's a very transitional period because they faced a huge or long term of conflict. Now they are in a position where, listen, the Taliban regime is not acknowledged by uh, other states. So still, it is a question. What would be the future of Afghanistan when we're talking about the great powers role? And also, apart from that, we have to look at Afghanistan. I mean, not from the failed state, because I personally don't believe in a failed state terminology. We know that in Western academia, normally when they're talking about these countries like Pakistan or Afghanistan or North Korea, they are normally using failed state or rogue state. But rather to say those things, we may say it's a transitional state. And emerging great power is India, because India's role and policy in South Asia and also in the world politics, we need to identify these countries in South Asia as an emerging great power state. I have also recent book about that to identify the India and China, especially India as an emerging great power, and how they're making their soft power to alter the or change the world politics, especially on some specific country like Pakistan, like Iran, and in current times, I'm working on the Bangladesh. So as India, it is still, or it is indeed an emerging great power state, and they're trying to make their own policy from the perspective of their own interest. And the other transitional middle power state, that's what I'm thinking, like with these three countries, they are the middle power countries. They don't have a capacity to be great power, neither they have a capacity to be a failed state. So it's a good thing for this three state. Let's say, for example, from the economic perspective, Bangladesh, they have a really good future, and Pakistan, they have a, you know, the military power. I mean, though it is a controversial, that's another stuff, but it's still, they have a military power. I mean, to identify themselves as a middle power. And Sri Lanka, I mean, in recent times, yes, they are facing many problems from economy to the internal policies, but still it's a very potential country to be a middle power state. So I'm just dividing this 8 states from this perspective: small states, transitional states, emerging great powers, and middle power. So whenever it comes to your mind, you may also think like this way, because it will help you a lot, I mean, to understand and to divide the region rather than to talk only geographical area. I mean, to understand the region from the perspective of, I mean, great powers, middle power, and transitional power, and a small state, that may help you to understand the region. Okay, let's come to this, or we can say the one of the most important discussion to identify the great powers competition in South Asia, or especially, I mean, before going to the South Asia, Asia particularly, we may understand the Asia first, because like we need to see how the great power states like USA, they enter in Asia, how they made their policy in Asia. So before going to these things, I think we can give a 2 or 3 minutes break. Haja, Mr. Haja, do you hear me? We can give a 2 minutes break. In the meantime, like some students, they can prepare their question, and I can also drink water and things, and then we can start again from here. What do you think? Is it good? I mean, we can take a 2 minutes break, and then we can start again from this.
No worries. Okay, 2 minute
Okay.
break. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay, Sam, that. And in the meantime, like participants, I mean, you can think if you have any questions from I mean, from our older lectures. Of course, you can ask the questions now, or you can ask the questions end of our lecture.
Okay. Students. Anyone who has any questions to Dr. Nazmul? I think that Dr. Nazmul has tried to explain some important points on the theoretical exposition about great powers, because this is actually part of his PhD dissertation and his current topic on what is it, so Asian geopolitics. So if you have any questions, please just ask. Maybe I'd like to welcome someone. who are going to ask question. Jalaluddin, do you have any question to Dr. Nazmul?
Yes, I think have
Okay, let me introduce Jalaluddin, you first, Jalaluddin, to Dr. Nazmul. So Jalaluddin is currently having his internship at the Indonesian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Yeah, so I think he has some questions for you, Dr. Nazmul. Please, Jalal, go ahead with your question.
Okay, yeah, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Nazmul, for the explanation. I think it's very interesting to see the geopolitics in South Asia, but particularly I'm looking forward to your answer in regards to the theorization of IR. I think you mentioned it before, and I think with the emerging power countries, like suppose that each country has their own, as you mentioned it, as a each country has their own psychology. I think I want to look on your opinion about the urgency and significance of efforts to develop a theorization of a global IR, where each countries has their own respective perspective in the case of global IR academia. I think perhaps you have any uh, I think information or discussion in regards to theorization
Okay.
of global IR in South Asian perspective. And I think because also some young generations of IR scholars in Indonesia also try to draw, Indonesian perspective in IR in a global politics context.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Jainal. That's a big question. I mean, we cannot just talk. I mean, in a very short period, but still the thing is we need to understand that when you are even also the use of global IR, it has been also used by some scholars, especially Amitabh Acharya. I'm not sure whether you are introduced with that scholar. He is a famous scholars in our field and try to explain the global IR. And it is also his one of opinion, like why the global IR is important, why we need to look the characteristic and perspectives of every region from their perspectives rather than from the let's say exist power like Western countries or Eurocentric world's perspective. So in that way, I mean, this we have to look at I told you the some specific criteria, like we have to see the identity of that country. Like say you are talking about Indonesia, we have to see the identity of Indonesian foreign policy. We have to look at the nature of Indonesian foreign policy, scope of Indonesian foreign policy. We have to see the narratives of Indonesian foreign policy. We have to see the discourses of Indonesian foreign policy. And then we can relate this all foreign policy option with the global IR perspectives, or from the perspective of international politics. And it would help us, or much more helping us, to identify how some other, let's say like a student from Cambridge, from Harvard, from let's say any Turkish university or any other university, they can relate in what way they can or they need to read the Indonesia. They need to read the India. They need to read the Philippines. They need to read the Malaysia. You got me? So it's very important thing. If you do not have your own discourses in international relations, then others will read your country's discourses from their perspectives. And it's a problem. And that's why you will see that there is many problems in international relations academia. However, this is a very good questions. We may have some more things about that. Let's discuss the main topic, especially like when you are talking about the idea of our, let's say, the great power competition around South Asia. You already remember we divide the South Asia in a very specific way. We try to see the South Asia from that perspective, and then we will try to relate the South Asia from the great power perspective. Yes, some here I'm trying to divide the issues little bit taking from the history. For example, we are trying to see the evolution, how the great powers enter in the region. Forget the Russia, forget the China. Let's talk about the USA. How USA they entered in the region. The first thing we have to see the Cold War, because the Cold War is a very important thing in a modern or contemporary international relations. Because the modern and contemporary international relations is wholly or mostly designed and architected by or from the Cold War period. So when we're talking the Cold War period, we have to look the USA, they entered in Japan at first. After the Second World War, they are for the helping or by the, I mean, to help the Japan, especially the Mansura islands. I mean, they have a conflict with the Soviet Union and they need help from the Western countries like USA. And USA, by making this kind of scenario, that at first they enter in a Japan. If you want to see, like before Japan, USA, they never had any kind of steps in Asian countries. So the first thing they entered in Asia by making their assistance to Japan and make their collaboration with Japan against the Soviet Union. And in Korea, in a South and North Korea's problem, I'm not going to the deep discussion about that. I'm just trying to see how the great powers, they put their step in there. Maybe you will, if you have a question, maybe we can go more. So the Korea is a second country. And you know that the Korean War in 1953, by making the NATO's expansion, they entered in Asia. And they helped to the South Korean country against the North Korea and also against the, the hegemony of China and Soviet Union. And also the Vietnam. Indeed, the USA, they lost in the war, but still they first and somehow they enter in the region by making their policy in Vietnam. And Afghanistan, that's the most important country that we need to understand how the great power, they entered in a region. I mean, we know that the last 20 years, forget the 20 years, we have to take the whole scenario from 1980s. We have to look at how Soviet Union, they entered in the region, and then how USA, by making their policy and collaboration with Pakistan, and also with other Muslim countries, they entered in Afghanistan against the Soviet Union. So these are the four countries that's most important things to understand the whole Asian region and the great power competition, especially from the history. Now we can talk about the post-Cold War South Asia, especially the American unipolar system. Especially end of the Cold War, means after the 1990, USA, they designed the whole South Asia and mostly the whole Asia from their own powerful perspectives. I mean that they architect the security from their perspectives. And this whole scenario of the power, it has been lined till to the 2010, or we can say that till to the 2013, until China, they expand and they initiated Belt and Road Initiative. So when China, they took this action, like the Belt and Road Initiative in 2013, and then in 2017, they initiated China and Pakistan Economic Corridor. They initiated different kind of policy like China-Bangladesh Economic Corridor, China-Myanmar Economic Corridor, China-Maldives, China-Iran, China-Afghanistan. They have a different kind of and different sort of action that you will see the different kind of reactions has been emerged from the USA. And that's the way you need to read the great power rivalry in here, great power competition in here. You will see the internal problems in Pakistan, internal problems in Sri Lanka, internal problems in Bangladesh has been emerged because it is basically not an internal problems. It is basically a great power competition in the region. When China, they have a huge or very good policy, or maybe we can say like some sort of effective policy in some specific country in South Asia, like Pakistan, you will see that there is also other initiative has been taken from the other powerful state like USA. And that's what we basically said in academia. It's a reactions from the great power countries or exist power countries like USA. And apart from that, we have so far seen different kind of initiative from the great powers, like, in the Pacific strategy, let's call the Quad. Quad is a security dialogue between the Japan, Australia, India, and USA. And they took this initiative to ensure their security, though basically it has been, it started for the development perspective, but now it is fully worked for ensuring their interest in the region. Not only the South Asia, but also, the whole Asian countries. Especially they have a target to ensure the security policy in the Pacific region. And also the EMAC, that's a very important thing to understand. This is the trade security offshoot. So this India, Middle East, European Economic Corridor, that's another important things to understand the South Asian region, how the great powers, they're making their policy. So the USA and India laid this trade security. They has been initiated this issue in South Asia to make us check and balance relations with China, because you know the China, they have a huge influence in here. So to stop their influence, these countries like China and like India and USA, they initiated the IMEC. And also AUKUS, that's a very important initiative to understand the Indo-Pacific and South Asian region. The USA, Japan, Australia, UK, somehow they come together and to ensure their own foreign policy game in South Asia, and making their partnership and collaboration in South Asia to take a side against or somehow make a balance against the China. So that's the way we need to read the region. And in a recent phenomenon, especially in the last 3 to 5 years, we have seen, apart from the China and US, there is also other confrontation between the India and China. Because as we said, India is an emerging great powers, and China somehow it's already exist great powers. They have their own way of confrontation. For example, the border problem. India and China, you will see that the most of the time they have a border conflict. It's a small scale of border conflict, but it's still they have a conflict in border. You will see that the China, they are somehow trying to control some part of the Kashmir, especially in Ladakh. And India, they want to control the whole Kashmir. That's an old debate. I don't want to go to that debate, but in normal sense, I mean, there is some small level of confrontation has been emerged in South Asia between India and China. It could be because of the trade. It could be because of the border security. It could be because of the regional politics. And also it could be like the Chinese policy in Pakistan. So that's the way like India and Chinese confrontation is emerging. And we are sure like in future, it will be much more emerged more and more. And now these things, let's say like, you know, we are talking about like some specific part. I just want to talk more about the Chinese action in the region. For example, when we're talking about the Chinese action, we have to look the Belt and Road Initiative. It's the most prevalent and most dominant hegemonic action that China took so far. We know that the China, they started their Belt and Road Initiative in 2013. But since 2013, China were not that much active in world politics. They just took the initiative and they're simply doing their trade. Somehow they're sending their productions, their business products through the, you know, Malacca Straits in between the Malaysia and Singapore to the Middle East and Africa and then Europe. That's what they so far did from 2013 to 2017. But in 2017, they took a very aggressive policy. I mean, from their perspective, it's a very good policy. But from the international, or especially from the Western perspective, or from the American perspective, it was a very aggressive policy. They took a China-Pakistan economic corridor. Under China-Pakistan economic corridor, they linked the Xinjiang, you know, the East Turkmenistan, the Xinjiang province of China, linked with the Pakistan, and made the Gwadar port. It's one of the very biggest port. I mean, it would be, still it is in a construction. It would be in one of the biggest port in Pakistan. And that port will link the China with the Indian Ocean, especially in the Indo-Pacific region. So for example, China, they invested so far $62 billion. And by making that investment, China is basically not, I mean, developing the, you know, infrastructure development, like, you know, the port. Basically, they're doing the hospitals, schools, universities, and the big roads, bridges. So by making this China-Pakistan economic corridor, they are not only making, you know, the simple investment, not making a, like a symbol, some sort of port. Rather, they are making their giant soft power hegemony. You know, when we're talking of the soft power, basically, we are talking that, you know, you are trying to take the heart and mind of other peoples by making a attraction, by making a peaceful things. But from the other perspective, it is not like that. You are basically making a different sort of hegemony in the region. So the China, they're making the CPAC, they are making their own policy and step in the region and making their soft hegemony in the region. And that's a very, we can say the transitional traits for USA and their partners like India, like Australia, like Japan, because they're afraid now if China somehow successfully did their all infrastructural projects in Pakistan, then they will have a more and peaceful and smooth connections with Indian Ocean, with African nations, with, that through the Hormuz Strait, they can go easily to the Middle Eastern countries with Iran, and then they can smoothly go to the, let's say, like to the European countries, and it will help China a lot. And that's the biggest problem and concern for the great powers who are making their policy in South Asia. And apart from that, we have to also see that the China-Bangladesh economic corridor. That's also another important factor. The China, they are making a different kind of infrastructure project, especially in the southern part of the Bangladesh. They're making a biggest roads, infrastructural projects like, port. They're trying to investment in a biggest bridges. Why they're making these things? Because they are connecting their own policy with the Bay of Bengal. And the Bay of Bengal is a crucial part to link with the Indian Ocean and also to make a check and balance the India's power. So China, they are making their step in there. And the other important is the China-Myanmar economic corridor. China is making their economic zone in a Rakhine state. The Rakhine state is so famous for us because in a Rakhine state, basically the Rohingya people, the Arakan people, they're living there. They were living there. Now they're uprooted. We know about this background. So why they were uprooted? One of the reasons, because China, they have a biggest plan in the region. China, they want to make an economic zone in there. And some, undocumented sources say that China, they have a military basis. I mean, they have a plan. I mean, in future to make those things in the region. And in that way, they can make their own check and balance in the region, not only the South Asia, but the whole Indian Ocean. So if they can make and control the city, there is a very influential and very effective port in the city. It's one of the city of Rakhine state, and they want to establish these things in there. And if they have a control of the port of Bangladesh and Myanmar and Pakistan, so it's almost the check and balance the whole region. I'm talking about South Asia, and they can easily contact with Indian Ocean and easily contact with African ports. That the China, why China? Especially from the perspective of West, from the perspective of India, from the perspective of the US, why they don't trust China? Because China, by looking or by making this kind of access, they established military bases in Djibouti. They have a plan to establish a different or a small kind of military bases in Libya, in many other, Arab countries, and also in South Asian countries. For example, let's talk to Sri Lanka. We know the one of the most recent internal problems in Sri Lanka, it was happened because of the economy. And many scholars, especially, Western scholars, though we have to take it critically, because they're normally writing something against China. So that's why you have to be critical. But in a normal sense, the Sri Lankan problem, it was happened because of Chinese trap diplomacy. China provided a huge money, as a loan to the Sri Lanka to make and to develop their the infrastructure of Hambantota port and also Colombo port. And then, there is a big questions happen, how the Sri Lanka, they can get back this loan to the China, because it's a huge money. And with the interest, this money is going to be a threefold and fourfold. And a country that can provide this money. And China, what they want, they said, okay, if you cannot provide us money, then give us the port. And that's the way they are making their policy in the region, taking control of Pakistan's port, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, and also listen like in Nepal, because they don't have any ports. So China, they are making a military alliances with them. China is making different kinds of agreement. And by this agreement, they may have, or they can have access inside the Nepal's military. And also they have a very good role in internal politics of Nepal. There is a specific, political parties in Nepal. They are directly supporting the Chinese accession in Nepal, and they're making their policy against India, for example. And also China Maldives, also another important things to understand the Chinese hegemony in here. For example, in Maldives, China basically working from the security perspective. In a recent time, just last couple of months before, China and Maldives, they made a agreement, and through this agreement, Maldives, they will send back to the Indian soldiers from Maldives, and they will give this kind of opportunity, the same opportunity to the Chinese soldiers to take control the different port of Maldives and also different touristic places of Maldives. So that's also the important scenario that we have seen from the Chinese perspective, how China is making their policy in the region. So in a South Asian countries, mainly China is making their policy in a small states like Sri Lanka, like Bangladesh, like Nepal, like Maldives. In that way, they're making their policy. Apart from that, when we're talking about the Chinese policy, China is still now, I mean, as a developed China or contemporary China, they never engaged militarily in any South Asian countries. Rather, they're involving with them by establish their soft hegemony, as I said earlier, infrastructural development, trade, investment in the port areas. These are their ways they are making their relations. Even also, apart from that, they are giving huge scholarship to the South Asian students, including Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Sri Lankan students. And these students are studying in China. And by that way, they are making their soft relations with those countries. They are establishing Confucius Institute in almost in every small state of South Asian countries. They are making their own, by making Confucius Institute, they are teaching the Chinese language. For example, in recent times in Pakistan, you'll see many kindergarten, for example, they are teaching Chinese language at the same time of English. So in that way, they are making their own hegemony, but in a soft way. Rather than making hard things, they are making their hegemony in a slowly but steadily, in a soft way, but for the purpose of hard things. So that's the way China is making their action in South Asia. And let's look to the Americans' reaction, how America is reacting to this scenario. The first thing we have to see that the America is a dominant nation, is an exist power. And as an exist power, it's not about the US. If you want to take the whole history of the dominant nations in a world politics or dominant power in the world politics, it could be the Roman Empire, it could be the Byzantine or Ottomans or Persian, whatever it is, you will see the very common scenario of the dominant powerful empire or nations. They have a priority, and it's a security. That priority is not trade. Their priority is not, political alliance. Their priority is not, economic alliance or economic investment. Rather, their priority is the security things. So how we need to define the security? When it is come about the, it is about the trade, then they're talking about the trade security. When it is about the economy, they're talking the economic security. When it is about the investment, they're talking about the investment security. When it is about the, politics, they're talking about the political security. When it is about the, the foreign policy, it is about the foreign policy security. So for them, the security is the most important thing. They want to ensure their security. How we can relate these things from South Asia? For example, maybe or probably you follow up this news. Before the Imran Khan, he withdrawn from the power, probably in 2020 or 2021. He said one thing, like why he had a very bad relations with US. It was happened because the USA, they want security access through Pakistan in Afghanistan and Pakistan border, because they want to use the drone, and they want to by using the drone, they have their own interest in the region to kill, let's say, the Taliban or those groups. But the Pakistan, they want some digital and some kind of investment for artificial intelligence and entrepreneurship. But the US, they say, like, we are not interested for those kind of stuff. For us, our security is first. So you have to access us, or you have to give us access to ensure our security. So this is a very common phenomenon, not only for the USA, as I said again and again. It is a very common phenomenon for any dominant, powerful state. let's say tomorrow, if China is going to be the superpower, you will see the same thing. China will possibly look only their security. For now, China is making trade. China is making, investment. Probably it could be successful or not. Probably it could be a very good or bad. But they are not, because they don't have that capacity to ensure their every security. But for USA, for any dominant nations, they are only looking for their security. That's the most important thing. And also, we have to see that we talk about the Pakistan. Let's talk about the Sri Lanka. In Sri Lankan internal problems, we have to look from the great power competition. Yes, there is a debt trap diplomacy, debt trap problems from the China. But on the other hand, there is also a huge impact from the India and USA. Because India and USA, they were not happy by looking at the investments from China that has been investment in Sri Lanka. And that's why when there is an economic crisis were started inside Sri Lanka, they never helped Sri Lankan government because they want to look like Sri Lanka, why you took the money from China and now you are falling in this trap and we will not help you. Normally, as a responsible country, sometimes, especially even my students, they are asking this kind of question, why USA and why European countries, why any, let's say, Western countries, they need to take the responsibility. Let's say, think about the refugees. Why European countries, they should take the refugees? Why USA, they should take the refugees? Why Canada, they should take the refugees? Is it important for them to take these things? They can only look their interest. But the answer is very simple. If you want to be the powerful state, if you want to be a dominant and superpower or great powers, then you must have to follow some responsibilities. It is the responsibility of the power. And it could be the humanitarian responsibility. It could be the security responsibility. It could be the military responsibility. It could be the economic responsibility. So let's say that Sri Lanka, they fall in a problem. They fall in a trap. In a normal sense, the other powerful state like India or like USA, they should help them. And they didn't help them. Why? Because the Sri Lanka and China during that time, they had a very good relations. And in that way, the great powers, they are making their competition. They're making their hegemony. They are trying to be silent to see, let's say, like, for example, Indonesia, if they have a very good relations with China, that the other great powers, they are waiting when Indonesia will fall, and they will not help Indonesia until Indonesia is totally dependent on, let's say, on USA or on Australia, for example. And in that way, the great powers, they are making their hegemony because they're waiting for the time to play their own interest-oriented policy. The same thing we can see that the Afghanistan, for example, in recent times, we have seen the chaos. It has been, successfully installed in Afghanistan in 2021, and the USA and their soldiers withdrawn from the region, and China automatically entered the region. And now China is making their own policy in the region. And for example, during the Americans' hegemony in Afghanistan, the India, they invested just only for some soft perspective, they invested more than $500 million just to establish their soft and humanitarian diplomacy in there by making a good connections with the Afghanistan people. But when USA, they withdraw their soldiers, the whole Indian policy has been destroyed. And now China, they are taking almost, we can say, like a very smooth policy in Afghanistan. And also, let's talk about the India, for example. India, in one way, they are the partner of the US. They are trying to be a partner of the Western countries. But on the other hand, they want to make their own collaboration with, let's say, other hegemonic countries like Russia. In a recent time, the Russia and Ukraine, their war, the India, they didn't take any side. In a normal sense, the Western great powers like USA, they demanded that every nations who are the partner of their country, they should take a specific role with Ukraine against Russia. But India, they didn't take this role. Yeah, from the Indian perspective, it's a good thing because India, they should look their own interest. But from the global perspective, it's a confusing thing because you are not taking a side with your partners. It means you are making your own policy, or maybe you are alone, or you are not, I mean, you don't know what you have to do. You are so much confused. So that's also the Indian case. We have to look more and more what will be the future of American policy in the region. Will USA, they will do their slowly or unique policy with India to ensure their hegemony in South Asia, or they will do their policy alone apart from the India? That's a good question, by looking the Indians' policy in the Russia or Russia and Ukraine war. And apart from that, India, that they are trying to make their own hegemony in South Asian small countries like Bangladesh, like Sri Lanka, like, Nepal, like also, Bhutan, for example, Maldives. They want to take their own policy. They don't want to take any kind of assistance from the US. Rather, they want to see, okay, we are the emerging great power. We have our own power. And by making or by having our own power, we want to make our independent policy on these small states. They don't want to see any kind of interfere from USM. So this is also other confusing things. So and also mistrustable or untrustable thing that is happening between India and Western nations. For example, let's say like in recent times, USA, they have a different policy for Bangladesh, especially for Bangladeshi internal politics. But India, they have a different policy. In Maldives, USA, they have a different policy. India, they have a different policy. Sri Lanka, India have a different policy. USA, they have a different policy. So that's the reasons, we cannot say like India and USA, they are totally agree in all of the issues. They have a different of priorities. I'm going to complete our lectures. I mean, within a very short time, I probably will take 2 or 3 minutes. Yes, so how we need to define then the region, especially the South Asia region, from the look of Indo-Pacific strategy. Because in the Pacific strategy, it will be a very dominant strategy in future. I'm sure like in the next decades or next couple of decades, what we'll see in South Asia, it will be totally depend on Indo-Pacific strategy. As I said earlier, the Quad, it will be more emerging and more dominant in the region. The US, Japan, Australia, and India, their partnership will be more dominant in South Asia. And by having and making their policy through the Quad, they will ensure the security against the Chinese ascents and Chinese access in South Asia. And the second thing is IMEC, that this India's Middle East European economic corridor. So US and India, through this economic corridor, they will ensure their hegemony in Middle Eastern countries and also European countries. So basically, this kind of trade cooperation and corridor, it is not for only these countries. It is basically making a balance with the Chinese hegemony. Because, the China, they are trying to make a great access to the Middle Eastern countries. They are trying to enter in Iran and also enter in Saudi Arabia. They have a very great access in South Asia, as per we discussed, like Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc. So now the China and India, US and India, they want to make a balance. So IMEC, that is the cooperation, we can say. Has been taken to ensure that balance. And AUKUS is also another part. We can say it's a core part because USM, they are not trusting France. They are not trusting Germany. They are not trusting any other European countries. In what sense? In a security sense. Because they have this idea, France and Germany, they have a very close trade relations with China. And maybe if there is anything happen in future, like any kind of real war, probably France or Germany will not take a side with USA. So that's why they are establishing a more security-oriented cooperation like AUKUS. US, Australia, and UK, they made this kind of collaboration. And by making this collaboration, they're making a balance between or within the balance. So if we are taking the Quad in a bigger scenario, AUKUS is a small scenario. So for example, AUKUS partners, they are more trustable for US rather than Quad partnership. And then, of course, like the free and open Indo-Pacific strategy, it is just only taken against China and Chinese hegemony in the region, and also the economic corridor or ETC. So this is the whole, phenomenon. We need to understand the region, and also we need to also see the what would be the future scenario that we need to read in the region, like South Asia. For example, the first thing, that will USA and their partnership, will they make any kind of NATO-oriented military cooperation in the region to make a check and balance with China? In a short time, no, it's not possible. In a midterm, yes. I mean, they may have taken initiative if China, if they make a military basis in Myanmar, in Pakistan, then we may see some kind of improvement of US and their partnership to make more military bases, like a NATO-related collaboration in the region. And for the long term, yes, because China is going to be a more hegemonic and more dominant nation in South Asia. And in that case, the US and their partnership will make a more balanced and more military cooperation in the region. And there is a second scenario that we have to read in the region. That's a new Cold War. New Cold War already started in the region, but the new Cold War is a balance with the economy and trade. But in future, we will see this kind of Cold War in politics more and more, and in a frequent way, in a military security, military cooperation, military investment, and the most important thing is the technology. You'll see that the new Cold War in technology between the China and USA in future. And also the power gaps. So for example, USA, they are losing their hegemony in the region, and it means like the China, it is going to be more powerful. So there is a power gap between the great powers. So it's automatically makes a geopolitical tensions. For example, like small states, let's think about the Sri Lanka or Bangladesh. They will be always confused. Should we take the side with Pakistan, with China, or should we take the side with USA? And it is a very, very geopolitical tensions, geographical problems, because you are always tense in which side you have to take, because you are always dependent on the great powers. You need an economy, you need investment, and you are confused because should you take the side with China, or should you take the Pakistan with the US? That's the biggest question that will see in future. And also, it also have a positive things, because a small state like Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, Maldives, and Bangladesh, these 5 states, and also including Afghanistan, let's say, they always have the very good opportunity to take a side. In one way, I said it's a confusing, but other way, it's an opportunity. Because if you know how to play here, then you can take a side. You can take like with the USA or China to gain more and more from those countries. So, I mean, that is also other things. Probably if you have a question, then we can expand those things by looking at those discussion. Maybe I can stop here and we can move to the question.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much, Dr. Nazmul, for your very comprehensive explanation, and also such detailed elaborations on South Asian hegemonic competition. And I think that some of my students are having some questions for you, especially when we relate the conditions of hegemonic competition in South Asia is not very much different to what we've experienced currently in Southeast Asia, because we're also having some degree of hegemonic competition, especially between China and United States. But the context is rather different in these two regions because there is some sense of military competition also going on, especially in the area of South China Sea. Now I would like to welcome probably Lolita. Lolita, do you have something to ask to Dr. Nazmul? Lolita is now researching about Bangladeshi politics. So I think that she's going to ask something about Bangladeshi politics to you, Dr. Nazmul. Please, Lolita.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Raza. First of all, thank you so much for your explanation, Dr. Nazmul. My name is Lolita, and I am the exchange students in UII that taking a South Asia class by Mr. Raza. Your explanations really helped me open my mind, because currently we are working on our paper that we are focusing on the competing tension about the political turmoil in Bangladesh. Your explanations give me a lot of insight, especially about you pointed that the problem in Bangladesh is not the internal problems, but it's shaped by the geopolitical rivalries and power dynamics between the global powers in the region itself. And regarding to our research, I would like to ask about the conceptual framework for our paper. We are considering using the theory from Samuel Huntington about the political decay. And do you think that this would be appropriate for our paper to apply in the research? Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good thing. I mean, first I would like to congratulate you and also want to thank you. I mean, to take this kind of topic. If I'm not wrong, you are fourth year or second year student? Yes, Lolita. Are you fourth year student or second year student?
Secondary students.
Okay, I mean, that's again. I mean, I want to thank you. I mean, and also I want to thanks to your professor, Hadja. It's really, I mean, thinking these things is also, I mean, it's a big thing. I mean, thinking those idea from your second year, it's a very, very positive thing. Now to come up to your question, yes, I mean, you can, of course, the Samuel Huntington is a very important scholar in our field. I mean, we have to see like, okay, how he developed some concept and we can relate this concept on the region. There is no problem. I mean, what we are trying to, or what I'm trying to say, like, what we need to find out the theoretical gap or conceptual or contextual gap. I'm trying to mean like, you don't need to do these things like say at your early age or your early time. Like so when you are doing your bachelor or undergrad degree, it's better for you to have an idea from every perspective, especially the mainstream IR theories. It's very important. But when you will do your master's or PhD thesis, it's important to develop or to see the gap. Are those theories or those ideas enough to identify the South Asian problems or Bangladesh's problem? Probably no, because somehow those theories has been developed from the ontology or from the epistemology of their region. So what we are trying to see, we are trying to see the other region. So that's why we need to basically, I mean, in a normal sense, we need to see the new lens. But for now, it's absolutely fine. I mean, I think it's a good thing to look at those ideas. And by utilizing those ideas, it could be Samuel Huntington, it could be Henry Kissinger, it could be John Mearsheimer, it could be, Stephen Walt, it could be Joseph S. Nye, Graham Allison, all of these scholars, I mean, especially the dominant scholars in our field. We have to look their idea, and then we have to see how those idea can relate with other region. And by making these things, for example, I can tell you my last one book, it has been published in the first month of January 2023. And in that theory, in that book, I'm trying to develop, the new theory by looking at all exist theory. So when you want to see or you want to develop a new concept, you have to have a very good idea about the exist concepts, exist theories. Because without any idea of exist theories, you cannot develop a new theory. I mean, before developing the new idea, let's say you want to identify the Bangladesh or the great powers competition in Bangladesh, then basically you have to see how the exist academician or scholars, they're defining the great power competition. They're defining the great power things on other countries. Then you can say, probably they don't talk about the Bangladesh. Probably they didn't talk about even the South Asian region, but still you can take this idea and try to analyze it from their perspective. Then maybe some part you can say, oh, okay, there is some gap. Huntington, maybe in his time, he don't have any idea of Bangladesh. He don't have any idea of India would be a great power, because during that time, India wasn't a great power. So it's a normal thing. He don't have any writings in his paper, but his idea can tell us some new outputs, new inputs, for example. And by having those kind of outputs and inputs, you can develop a new concept. You can say, oh, okay, Huntington, he said these things, but for analyzing the contemporary issues in South Asia, we need to develop this new concept or new idea. So that's the way we have to also utilize our stuff, utilize our idea, utilize our theory and concept. So thank you. I hope so you get my you got your answer, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, I am. Thank you so much, sir, for your explanations.
Okay, yes, I mean, and also not for only for you, for all of you. I mean, you will find my email from Mr. Hajja, and you can also ask me anything, and we'll communicate with each other, no problem. Especially as you are working on South Asia, that too, I mean, I would be very pleased actually to be connected with all of you. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think we have a question written in Zoom, Dr. Nazmul. So this is question from Mutia Aulia Rahmat. So I think she is asking a question about BIMSTEC. So she was asking a question about how effective is BIMSTEC cooperation improving the economic sector, and is there any particular goal of India and Thailand related to the formation of BIMSTEC? So I think as someone who came from Bangladesh, you can give a deeper insight on BIMSTEC development.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Mutia. I mean, yes, I have actually part of the BIMSTEC, but we don't have enough time to discuss again those kind of multilateral and the group organizations and their role in South Asia. But yeah, it's a good question. The BIMSTEC, we have to see it somehow in South Asia, that we had a SARC. The SARC, it was a very one of the very good and leading organizations in South Asia, but because of some political and economic priorities and also security priorities, now it has not that much of effectiveness in South Asia. For example, we can talk about the India's role in here, because India, they were not happy with the SARC's existence, especially because they need to deal with Pakistan. So it was not easy things for them, I mean, to give, or they are not interested to give access to the Pakistan in any kind of international flora or even the regional flora. Now come here, the BIMSTEC. I mean, by avoiding SARC, they are giving much more priorities to BIMSTEC. So BIMSTEC is one of the, we can say the dreaming project for the India. So India making this BIMSTEC, they want to make it their own way of cooperation. Let's say, for example, if you want to take the China-Pakistan economic corridor as a Chinese dream in South Asia or in Pakistan, the same way the BIMSTEC is a dream for India to ensure their trade and economic security in the region, especially through the Bay of Bengal and also Indian Ocean. And so far, all of the BIMSTEC projects, especially the projects, the diplomacy, the dialogue, whatever you will have seen so far, it is helping actually India to ensure their own policy and to some extent their own hegemony in the region. And Bangladesh is a very important partner for India, I mean, BIMSTEC. And also, like, in recent times, the India and Bangladesh, they're working more cooperatively and more closely. So that's why it's much more easy for them actually to work together. And we have so far seen that in a BIMSTEC, if you want to calculate some members, then the Bangladesh and India is a more core partners to ensure the BIMSTEC projects. So the BIMSTEC, it will have a much more potentials and perspectives as India is a rising power. So it's automatically they will invest more in BIMSTEC to ensure their own interest. And automatically we can see the more, perspectives and more positive future through the BIMSTEC, especially in the South Asian region. Okay.
Thank you so much for your answer. I hope that it has been answered, Mutia. Any other students would like to ask questions? We have questions from Jalal, from Lolita, and from Mutia. Do you have any other questions, students? We still have some more minutes to go before we are ending the session. Okay. Okay, seeing none, I think that there's no more questions. Oh, Lolita, do you want to ask follow-up questions, please?
Yes, please. If my other friend didn't have a question, I do have a question about the India and Bangladeshi government. They seems like really close, and does it contribute to the opposition backlash by the other opposition party in Bangladesh?
Yeah, that's a very good thing. I mean, it makes me so immersed actually to see the critical questions from your students, Mr. Hadza and Lolita. I'm also again thanks to you. Making this kind of critical question is very good for students. But giving answer from as a lecturer is very hard, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, I mean, you know, this what we were saying. I mean, let's say if US they have very good relations with the X party or Y party, then automatically if they have very good relations with X party, then Y party will not be happy with that policy. It's a very normal sense. It's not for only Bangladesh. It's a common thing for all over the world. But now, if we want to see the Bangladesh's case, it's very critical because Bangladesh, so far, in the last, we can say the last three elections, since 2014, 2018, and I mean, this last couple of months before, there's one other election. And these three elections is, we can say it's a very controversial election because opposition parties, somehow they don't have any role in election. So it's just only the government party. They just make election by themselves and they come to the power. So from the academic perspective, we can say it's not a democratic government. It's not a free and fair election. And then normally, yes, I mean, there is no democracy in the country. So when there is no democracy in the countries, it's automatically, I mean, we can say fairly, we can say the foreign policy, it's most of the time it's an authoritarian foreign policy. So, you know, authoritarian foreign policy, you know, we can discuss whether it is a good or bad. But in a normal sense, as people are not concerned about the internal policies, people don't have a right to give a votes. They don't have a right to go to the election. They don't have a right to participate in an internal scenario of the country. That is a very critical things, you know, to have or to look how country are making a relation with other countries. So let's take the case of the India and Bangladesh. The India is one of the main partners. We can say in a positive way, yes, India is a main partner to make a cooperation with Bangladesh. And somehow, not only for this time, since our independence from 1971, India was a core partner. I mean, in a positive sense, they helped us, they assist us, and they are trying to do their things to make a Bangladesh as a model to show to the whole world, look, I mean, how we can help our partner, our friends. The same thing, let's say, like I forget to tell it that for China, let's say, why they are making this, you know, immersed and the big and massive investment in Pakistan, because they want to show the whole world Pakistan is a model state for China. Because China, they are trying to talk the peaceful rise, harmonious society. So how they can prove it? They're proving like, oh, okay, look, I mean, what we're trying to do in Pakistan, we're trying to do everything in a very positive way. So the same way India is trying to do everything in a positive way in Bangladesh to show the whole world, oh, okay, we are making a very model state. But for making such thing, they are trying to take a very specific side. They're trying to do everything with a political party rather than be political party. And they're very clear about that. Like, okay, they have a side with this political party. Whether there is a democracy or there is anything, they don't care about that. They are taking a side. So it's normally, you know, I mean, from I mean, if we read the literature and academic articles, it's very clear about that. I mean, when you have this kind of situation, then the future of that country is very, very critical. Because that country, I mean, whatever they're taking the policy, they're not taking policy by their own way because they're not independent to take their policy. they're totally dependent on X country like India, and India is taking decision on behalf of them, and it's a huge problem. For India's perspective, it's a very positive thing because India is successfully did it and take that advantages. India, they need to, that if you want to see the map of the India need to connect with the seven sisters. We can say the seven provinces of India. It is near to the China, near to the China, and India don't have a direct and physical connections with those states. And now, because of Bangladesh and because of their very good and cooperative relations with Bangladesh or the current political party, they have a now direct access with those seven provinces. You know about the Manipur, Arunachal Pradesh, province. You know about the Tripura. You know about there are seven provinces. Those provinces have, somehow they have a different kind of terrorist groups, and those groups, they want independence from India. And those groups are somehow, there's some debates. It said that they are getting help from the China. And now the question is here, by having a good relations and not having a democracy in Bangladesh, now India, they can have access through the Bangladesh to go to those seven provinces. They have a rail access, they have a maritime access, they have all kinds of access through the Bangladesh. And it doesn't care, it doesn't matter like whether Bangladesh have any kind of benefits from that or not. So it's a very critical thing. Like when you don't have a good democracy in your country, then any countries, then, they can play with your country because there is no people's rights. So that's happening in Bangladesh, unfortunately. Now it's a football playground, and great powers, they're playing in here, and ex great powers are kicking, and white great powers are kicking from other side. And this is the playground. And now the small state like Bangladesh, they're played by great powers, especially like India or like USA or sometimes with China. So yeah, I hope so. I just try to say it from, not mentioning a specific name. But yes, I hope so you got my answer, Lalita.
Yes, thank you so much. It's very clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Nazmul, since it's almost 1 hour and 45 minutes after our discussion. So I think that this is the end of the session. Lastly, I would like to say thank you so much for participating in this discussion together with my students, also my students for actively asking questions to Dr. Nazmul. If you have any additional questions or concerns that you would like to ask Dr. Nazmul, I would like to ask my students to just inquire Dr. Nazmul's email through my personal contact, and I will be providing you with Dr. Nazmul's email. I hope that Dr. Nazmul can be consulted about my research, my students' research plan on South Asia, because those people who are talking, these students who are taking course on South Asia are very interested to learn more and to dig deeper into the context of South Asian politics. And some of them have written a very good proposal on this topic as well. So thank you once again, Dr. Nazmul. See you someday.
Yeah,
And
inshallah.
Yeah. Do you have anything to say before we're finishing?
Thank you so much. It's a really great honor to be here and to discuss with you and with your students. I'm seeing actually there are many bright students of you, and they're really, really interested to learn and more about South Asia. I'm sure in future academia, they will contribute more, especially in a scholarly, theoretically, conceptually, and practically in an empirical way. So I'm best wishes for all of you. And as your lecturer said, if you want to reach to me, you are open to reach to me, and I would love to see you in Turkey. I hope so in any day or other day you will come here, and whenever you will come here, I will be happy to host you, okay? And see you here. And thank you so much, and thank you so much again to Mr. Hajjat. I can see you again. See you soon.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much.